Recognized Uncle Walker D01. Recognized Emily of Arden D12. Recognized Joe Moniac D05. Recognized Greg Wiseman 001. Recognized Brandon Vietti 002.
Hello, team, and welcome back, and thanks for joining us for Whelmed Garage Session Episode 2, Fireworks. I'm producer Neil, and I'm here with Rich and Emily.
Hey, everyone. In these episodes, we'll be diving into Young Justice once again, but this time around, we will look deeper into the production side of things, and who better to do that with than Greg Weisman and Brandon Vietti.
Unlike our previous review episodes, we won't be having a Crashing the Mode segment, so consider this your relevant spoiler warning for everything.
There's part of me that realizes how funny it would be to just say something about the end of season 4 every time you do that, but I think we'll pass on that just to ensure, like, no, listen, we'll talk about the whole series. I think we skipped the segment from last time, and I think we just jump right in. So it's back to you, Emily.
I'm sorry, you put more in the outline, and you expect me to be ready to just say more lines immediately?
Yeah.
You're professional.
Apparently, sometimes.
Hello, Megan.
The title of this week's episode is Fireworks. The release date was November 26th of 2010 and January 14th of 2011. The writer was Greg Weisman, the director was Sam Liu, and the voice director was, as always, Jamie Thomason.
So we're doing the log lines? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
We're figuring it out as we go.
I
think we should be doing the made-up log lines that would appear on Wikipedia back in the day for episodes that never happened. Somebody find those in the Internet Archive.
Just in time for your next mission.
The HBO Max logline describing this episode is Robin, Aqualad, and Kid Flash are prisoners of Project Cadmus. Their only hope is to help them break free. That's a very strange sentence.
Definitely not one of my loglines.
Yeah, and definitely not. The TVDB dog, TVDBD. The TVDB. One more time. I'm real tired, guys. I'm going to be punchy. TVDB logline. The sidekicks find a clone of Superman known as Superboy. They free him from Cadmus control while battling Blockbuster.
The IMDb synopsis for this episode is Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad are captured, and only Superboy, the telepathically controlled clone of Superman, can free them. As they struggle to reach the surface, they must do battle with the transformed scientist known as Blockbuster.
And to round us out, Wikipedia brings us this wonderful reordering of the three, which I guess we can break down if we feel like it. But, oh, no, this feels like I did it because who's first? I apologize. I did not edit Wikipedia.
It's Neil favoritism.
Kid Flash, Robin, and Aqualad are captured by the Cadmus Genomorph forces, which prepare to clone and dispose of the originals. Their only hope is the Superman clone, Superboy, who must choose between freedom and subservience. Oh man, big
that
words.
Watch
out,
Neil. English, Neil.
Yep, and subservience to those who created him. Oh my! And this is exactly why I did that, because welcome to the internet.
So I think we should make Greg make a log line.
I'm trying to find mine right now as we speak.
Oh,
okay. So here's the one. I think you read it already, but here's what my log line was: Robin, Aqualad, and Kid Flash are prisoners of Project Cadmus. Their only hope is to convince the Superboy to switch sides and help them break free.
Oh, there's like a piece missing. Because the sentence that I read was, their only hope is to help them break free. And I'm like, that doesn't have a thing.
internet telephone.
Oh yeah, apparently. G, HBO Max. Didn't get your logline right.
I also, back in season 1, refused to use a final draft, which is the sort of the industry script writing program of choice that.
Yeah, please tell them that story. Please tell them what you wanted the writers to work with.
A pen and paper and a stack of 3x5s.
No, well, I mean, we did the 3x5 stuff anyway. Well, I used a Microsoft Word template that was developed at Disney, which was far superior to Final Draft.
In what year?
In 1994. But and it was still superior to Final Draft in 2010. But around that point, as we got past 2010, Disney had stopped supporting that because they had also adopted Final Draft. And so they stopped supporting the template, and Microsoft Word had advanced to a point where the template stopped fully functioning. And eventually, I think between season 2 and season 3, even I had to abandon that template because it just no longer functioned. I was one of the last holdouts because Final Draft is awful. It's truly awful. It was a buggy program when it started, and they kept adding all these features, things that 90% of the human race don't need in writing a script. They keep adding all the buzzes and whistles without ever fixing the inherent bugginess of the program. And the only saving grace, and the one thing I will admit that Final Draft is good on, is that it saves automatically every couple minutes. So when it crashes, which it will, you've lost at most 2 minutes worth of work. And you can go back, and you can go back to a version from 8 weeks ago if you want. It just continues to save all these versions. And that is the reason why everyone sort of switched over to Final Draft. But in terms of actually writing on it, it's been a disaster. It's still a disaster. And I've been using it consistently now for over a decade, but it's still a disaster. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with my business.
I have no complaints about it. I just was always amused by that story, though.
That was my next question, Brandon. I was like, how did you feel about it? How did this make you feel?
I don't know. Better question probably for other writers. I always trusted, Greg's instinct on that because he just had more experience in writing with all that stuff. So it was no big deal to me. I was just more amused that, he was clinging to the old stuff because there are many examples of that. We're polar opposite in that sense that he prefers old tech. I prefer new tech. And I'm in no means like bleeding edge tech guy, but I do enjoy keeping up to date.
Maybe I hate keeping up to date.
I mean, listen, the reason they call it the bleeding edge of technology is because you will bleed. Like it is not all butterflies and sunshine out there on the edge. It's cool, but it's not always fun. My only hesitation about keeping Word that long would be copy pasting into other things because it carries with it a lot of extra code. But other than that, no reason not to. You're already on a Mac. You could have used Time Machine to keep all those versions.
I don't know what that is.
See, we could have figured this out though. I would have believed in us.
There's a time machine in my computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
That explains all the chronoton radiation poisoning that I've had over the years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You got a tumor that moves through time. Is that what's going on?
Oh,
okay, cool.
No,
let's not do that. Next section. Oh, are you gonna put a soundbite in there for that, Neil?
Mm-hmm.
You're overwhelmed. Freeze was underwhelmed. Why isn't anyone ever just whelmed?
Cool. Burning questions.
Yeah,
Emily.
It literally has a soundbite right in there. Why isn't anyone just whelmed?
I get it. It's weird you're putting new things in after 10 years. I'm like Greg. I don't want new things.
The April Fool's episode, you just need to use the audio from 10 Things I Hate About You instead of Young Justice that does this same joke.
Yep.
It's a test of people of which one you think of when you hear this line.
Exactly.
Rich, I don't think my burning questions should be first because mine are about things that happened in literally the last 30 seconds of this episode. So maybe somebody go more chronological.
That's fair. I got a question that's been haunting me since the beginning that I've never gotten to ask, which is Robin says Batcave's crowded enough. At that point, I was like, oh, maybe it's Tim. Because I'm like, how many... Is Batgirl there yet? Like, so I was just thinking, like, that's a funny line, but I didn't think about it until I went back and, of course, was rewatching it, and I was like, wait, this is Dick. It's just Alfred, Bruce, and Dick, right? So I was curious about that line and where it came from.
There are a lot of bats.
You're not wrong. That is true. Bats are people too.
Maybe Ace.
That's what I was thinking.
What about the cow? Because we never really got an answer on that.
I'm familiar with the cow.
You've never seen Bat
You've never seen Bat Cow? Beloved member of the Bat family?
Do not think I have.
No, that's a thing. All right, cool.
But that doesn't mean it's not there. There are a lot of characters I didn't know existed, and then we ended up putting it.
I was like, I was getting to the point where I was like, I don't know, Batmite? I don't know. Maybe not. Okay. But anyway, when he said Batcave's crowded enough, I was curious as to what you were referencing there. Because it does eventually get crowded.
It does. But to me, that was sort of future irony. It's more like...
you think it's crowded now.
Just in terms of what he's thinking when he says that is like, hey, there's me, there's Batman, it's enough.
Mm-hmm.
But then the irony being that down the road, there are going to be a lot more members to the Bat family.
Yes, the stereotypical loner guy who has 15 sidekicks.
Right.
I'm gonna fight alone, along with all these other people. The other thing that I had, mine was almost like really close to the last line too, Emily. One of the other things I was going to say was that the double X line where he calls Jim brother at the very end, that one took me a while to catch, even after I had watched it several times.
Yeah, he does that throughout. He refers to both Connor and Jim as brother, and he does not refer to Robin, Aqualad, Kid Flash as brother. He does not refer to Desmond as brother, but he consistently refers to, and that was an intentional hint. There's even a line that hints at Roy/Will somewhere in there. I noticed last night.
Well, I mean, on the exact topic, because while you're looking for it, I mean, Project Cadmus was something that existed for a long time. What didn't exist, though, was the term genomorphs. And I have a sneaking suspicion it's because you didn't necessarily want to go with the previously sanctioned DNA-aliens that I found as the potential counterpoint or Jack Kirby version of genomorphs. DNA-aliens. That's a lot to toss in there.
I don't remember why we settled on genomorphs. Do you?
I don't.
I mean, I knew about DNA-aliens. I think the idea with that, it's not the Kirby-esqueness of it that bothered me. I think it's that it seemed distracting. Like, wait, they're aliens? Instead of sort of going, hey, it's a cute name for these cloned creatures that we created. I think I don't remember having this conversation, but the way my mind thinks of it right now is just throwing the word alien in it suddenly makes you think, wait, they're from another world. And I remember we had one line in Gargoyles where some characters said something like, they're so alien about the gargoyles, not meaning like aliens from another world, but just like they're so different. You know, it was just a synonym for different. And we got all this, oh my God, the gargoyles are aliens. And I'm like, no. You know, so I think maybe that I had this sort of knee-jerk reaction to throwing in the word alien in a casual way. But I don't remember where the name Genomorph came from.
Brandon, do you remember?
I don't remember. I mean, it ties in with, part of our checklist, I think, for a lot of this stuff and trying to ground it in some kind of reality. And instead of it being, crazy, sci-fi science or magical stuff, trying to use words and terms that do sound like they come from our everyday life and genetics labs and genetic experimentation and that kind of stuff. I think, we were trying to figure out how to ground everything into something that feels real. So it must have bubbled up out of that.
Well, the genomes is it was a really good play on words on multiple levels, especially when you're also throwing in like G trolls, right? So you've got the genomes and then a genome and the whole deal. Like that was actually really, really well done and seemed to tie a lot of things together. Because obviously, like Neil is saying, like Cadmus with, clones and stuff has been around forever. My kids and they're doing a run through of, they asked me the other day, they said, okay, outside of Young Justice, like what's your favorite like animated storyline arc? And I was like, oh, like Justice League Unlimited was one of my favorites before this. So we went back to watch some of that and they're like, oh, look, it's Cadmus again. Oh, look, it's clones again. So they're starting to, and also I was like, oh, that guy in the back with the weird red hair and the torn shirt, that's Blockbuster. And they were like, no, I don't accept that Blockbuster at all. That Blockbuster, what is that? Wrong. And I was like, yes, I understand. I'm glad I introduced you to the correct Blockbuster early.
Although That one was closer to the comics.
It was. It was. He looked exactly like the one from the comics.
There's a line that Kid Flash says in the episode, "Incredible Bulk," because when Blockbuster was first introduced, it was just sort of like, oh, it's a ripoff of the Hulk,
It's just a non-green Hulk.
And,
yeah.
And talked like the Hulk, all that stuff, and so that was a little sort of, I don't know, Easter egg or lip service to the original sort of concept. But yeah, I do like our version a little better.
A little bit better. Makes a little bit more sense.
And also just, it's so much creepier. I mean, my favorite moment probably the whole episode is Kid Flash.
Yep.
Got your
nose. Yeah. The got your nose line gets my kids every time. They're just like, oh, like I love it. And also gross. Actually, their favorite line from the whole first couple of episodes, and it's said around our house a lot, is I hacked the motion sensors. I'll be like,
it's a very
Grayson, did you feed the dogs? I fed the dogs. I hacked the motion sensors. Yeah, like which is great. And also, speaking of the voice actor, right? I never get this name right. Rene Auberjonois. I can never pronounce his last name correctly. I think I got it that time. I have loved him forever, since I was a kid watching him on Benson way back in the day. And then, of course, in Deep Space Nine. So you guys had him for the first, for him. And then, of course, Blockbuster doesn't really have any lines. Maybe it's just me because he's important to me, but like, he seems like a pretty big actor. And was he doing a lot of voice acting stuff at the time? How did you guys pull him in?
I was trying to remember that myself.
I mean, it's Jamie. I mean, we weren't the first guy to use him for something in voice, but yeah, he was mostly a live action on camera actor. And, but he had done some voice stuff before, I'm pretty certain.
For those who might not know him, he played Odo on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So he was the security shape-changing officer. But he'd been in a ton of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I was watching the episode and I was trying to remember how he was cast as well. And I think I just had assumed, because Greg, I know you cast a number of Star Trek actors along the way.
Oh, you know what? Oh,
why? I just
assumed, my gosh.
Yeah, that there must have been a connection there, but that's not the case.
Not specifically with him. I mean, Jamie and I had a lot of inroads with the whole Paramount rep company, so to speak. And certainly Gargoyles made use of that a ton. But those shows were also going at the same time that Gargoyles was going. When we started, Next Generation was going. By the time Gargoyles ended, they had already started Deep Space Nine and Voyager. But I can't imagine, Deep Space Nine wasn't still going when YJ started, was it?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
But, I was a fan of Renee's. But my guess is that we did sit down and have conversations with Jamie about what we were looking for. And I would lay odds that Jamie pitched Renee, and we were like, yeah, we didn't audition guest roles at all. So
I'm sorry, did you say you didn't audition guest roles?
Did not audition guest roles ever that I can recall. We auditioned 7 roles for season 1, the 6 leads and Superman, because we knew we needed the same actor to be able to play both Superman and Superboy. So we auditioned to get 6 actors to play 7 roles. So we had audition sites for both Superman and Superboy, but we didn't even audition Batman or any of the other leaguers. The only reason we auditioned Superman was because we knew we needed someone who could do both. And then
was that the same for like Crispin too? Because the
thing. Crispin auditioned for Superman and Superboy.
Oh, right.
And we didn't think he was right for that, but we heard how he could do the same. He had the same ability that Nolan had to separate the voices, and yet without changing his voice,
right?
And his sound wasn't right for what we were looking for Superboy, but because he had that ability, we just cast him in these episodes, Speedy and Guardian, but knowing that he'd end up playing Red Arrow, Arsenal, Guardian, Jim, Roy.
Yeah.
And eventually Roy became Will, and the new Roy, who was actually the old Roy, became Roy. But I mean, we knew that was coming. I don't think we had come up with the name Will yet, but we knew that we were going to eventually have 3 characters, all with the same voice. So Crispin didn't get the Superboy Superman role, but his audition for that is what got him all the Harper brothers.
Right.
And for guest roles, including the Harper brothers, we did not have time to audition those. So I don't think we held auditions again until the beginning of season 2, when we did all the Cloud Ninja stuff for
right.
We've heard about
I
that.
think our interview with Eric Lopez, he talks about that, the Cloud Ninja thing.
for Blue Beetle and Scarab. It was the same deal.
Actually, I think it was Cam. Maybe it was Cam Bowen in one of those interviews.
Well,
Cam Bowen
it was Jason, Cam, Eric, and we didn't do Cassie because May had auditioned for something else for us. Maybe it was Miss Martian or Artemis. I can't remember now, but we knew we wanted her. So we didn't hold auditions for Wonder Girl, but we did for Impulse, Blue Beetle / Scarab, Robin, and Static. And because we'd been so burned by that one guy who auditioned for Aqualad in season 1 and then posted it all on the internet, which blew up, got us flooded with racist comments and all sorts of other crap that we just didn't need. I created a fake show for people to audition for what was really season 2. And I did that for season 3 as well. But Zeno saw right through it.
Yeah, he said that in his interview too. He was like, oh. He got very excited as well when he figured it out.
But yeah, so in terms of season 1, I don't think we auditioned any guest characters. That was all. One of us would pitch someone. I remember Brandon pitching Bruce as Batman because he had worked with him. Brandon pitched Nick Chinlund for Luther. And I said, no, let's go with Mark Ralston for Luther and make Nick Sportsmaster.
Yeah.
Nick had this rougher quality to his voice, and Mark had a silkier kind of feel. And not that, Mark's very versatile. He could have, probably either of them could have done both, but it was more organic to the way their voices sounded.
When I figured out who Mark Ralston was, I was like, who is doing this voice? And I'm like, he was in Aliens? And I'm like, what? It blew me away. So why did he come up? Has he done other voice stuff that I'm not aware of, or where'd you know him from?
Originally, I knew him because his daughter went to junior high school with my daughter. And I knew him from television and movies and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But I just knew him. And I just thought, I knew he was a great actor. I'd seen him on things like, I don't know, The Closer or Major Crimes, one of those 2 shows.
Yeah.
I knew what he was capable of, but I'd also just heard him talk, and I just liked the sound of his voice.
Yeah.
But Mark and I were friends because our daughters were friends. Nick, I didn't know. I don't remember why you brought Nick up. Did you hear him in something? But I remember you did bring him up.
I must have. He's been in a ton of great movies too, if you look at his IMDb page. So yeah, clearly we were all, had our ears wide open in everything that we watched at the time. And we were trying to bring some interesting voices in. And Nick certainly has a unique, standout voice. So
yeah, we all love to hate Sportsmaster.
And I'd worked with Miguel Ferrer on Spider-Man, but mostly that was because of Mulan. I just thought the villain in Mulan, whose name also escapes me at the moment, I'm like, that guy could have been Vandal Savage back then, and I thought, that's Miguel Ferrer, let's go for that character. And then, just talking about the light, casting Marina as Queen Bee was a no-brainer for me because I always think of Marina as the most villainous character always. And which I think she appreciates, after playing the nicest character in
That's exactly
Alpha
what I thought,
Quadrant. I think it's a great relief to her to get to be a villain.
Get to do something else. Yeah.
again, I'd worked with Tom Adcox for years, so I knew that he would be incredibly, perfectly annoying and mischievous and as Clarion. Who else? Roger Craig Smith had also auditioned for Superboy Superman, and again, hadn't quite been right, but we thought he was really great. So casting him as Ocean Master was kind of a no-brainer. And
one of the things, again, rewatching that Justice League Unlimited, Dr. Fate shows up, and one of my kids was like, "This guy sounds familiar," and I was like, "It was Oded Fair." So they were like, "Oh, right." Who is so good, both as Fate and Raish.
Yeah, I had worked with Oded on something. Oh no, maybe I hadn't back then, but to me it was just what he did in the Mummy movies. I was like, yeah, he'd be great for Raish.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I forgetting? Oh, The Brain. I think that was probably Jamie. I mean, I've worked with Corey Burton on and off since going back to Gummy Bears, but I think that was Jamie who said, yeah, he does a great evil French guy. And so
that's on your resume. Evil French guy.
Evil French guy. So
I'm gonna say, Rich, I gotta give you a little bit of a hard time here. So obviously Renee needed no interview because he's been doing voice acting before I was alive. So we'll start there.
Right. Yeah.
And then part of it was because he was Desaad for the Super Friends.
No.
Yes. It'd be weird if I made that up. And so yeah, he was Desaad. It would be wild if I just made this up out of whole cloth. I'm
looking at it right now. 100% sure you didn't just make that up.
Okay,
well, first of all, my brain is like
I can't edit IMDb. Those are not the same.
You don't have that power.
When my brain is trying to go back, going like, when was Desaad in Super Friends? I mean, Darkseid was. Okay, I'd have to go watch those again. That must have been later.
The last seasons of Super Friends, they really brought the Kirby stuff.
Yeah, I remember that. I just don't remember Desaad.
And they let Kirby redesign the characters for animation so that he could get
credit.
Not just credit, but money.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Because I know this will be shocking to you all. Oftentimes artists design things and then, never get any royalties off the hundreds of thousands of dollars that the various companies wind up making off this stuff.
There's actually a really good play about the Jack Kirby saga of him being cheated out of a lot of money. Hi, my theater degree coming in handy for 2 minutes on this podcast. It's called King Kirby. Check it out. It's very good. It's
interesting. King Kirby. And she is now showing us a thing.
It's within reaching distance of my recording setup. It's a good play. It's by Crystal Skillman and Fred Van Lente. It's a good play.
Wow. That's nice. Cool.
That is really cool.
Heard of that.
Yeah, I hadn't either.
The just outside of what can be seen on Zoom is my whole bookshelf of plays and scripts from college, and that was
it was impressive. You literally just leaned a few inches to the side and came back with mind-blowing book.
I knew where
that
it
was pretty hilarious.
The things you can find at the Drama Bookshop.
I'm gonna need to close this IMDb page because he was also General Zod in the Superman series. He also really enjoys any role that he could have been a doctor or professor, because I mean, not that they were all like long running, but the Snorks, he was Dr. Strange Snork for 42 episodes. So
40.
Come on now, Rich.
Hey man, my bad. I did not start a podcast about Snorks.
And speaking of somehow connecting this to other TV shows, I have to circle back to the DN Aliens thing. When you brought that up, Neil, I was like, why does that sound familiar? I have no context for this thing Neil is talking about. Why does that sound so familiar? Ironically, at about the same time that Young Justice was not using that term, one of the Ben 10 sequel series was using that term as one of their major villains for like 2 whole seasons. So I was like, oh, that's why that sounds familiar. Something that has nothing to do with DC Comics. So it would have been very confusing to little 8th grade Emily if 2 shows I was watching were suddenly like, so the villains are called DN Aliens. I'm like, no, why? What? How? These are different universes.
There was another comic that I want to say it was Pacific Comics. called DN Agents.
That sounds familiar to me.
And I have a fairly clear, it was Mark Evanier and I think it's pronounced Mineo, Will Mineo, who later produced the X-Men series that X-Men 97 is based on. But they did this series called DN Agents, which was really good, I thought. And of course, Mark Evanier was Jack Kirby's assistant for years and years. But again, that wasn't the reason we didn't use it. I think the reason was that just the word alien was distracting and sort of would have led the audience in a confusing direction.
Oh, I would have been right there with you.
Yeah.
Conspiracy board all day long.
Yeah. I know we talked about the voice actors for The Light. Was there, I guess, kind of what it went into creating that first set of 7 of picking them out? Was it to kind of fill in certain, I mean, obviously it's got to be plot points down the road. Was that like the main reason for picking the 7?
I mean, I started putting together a list of sort of major villains, not just your everyday, hey, punch them out characters, but who might be the big shots. And I have that list somewhere, but it had to have like 50 or so names on it. And so Brandon and I went through that list. And I think initially we were just looking for areas of interest that would overlap, but where we had this determination that our major villains at least, weren't going to be fighting with each other. Because one of the things that struck me about a lot of villain team-ups in the past was that the villains would get together and in the end, they'd almost defeat themselves, that they'd start fighting among themselves. The heroes would either exploit that or the heroes wouldn't even have to exploit it. The bad guys would, in essence, defeat themselves because they couldn't get along for 3 minutes or 22 minutes, I guess is. And so we sort of decided right out of the gate, no, our group are going to be simpatico to each other. They're going to have different spheres of influence. There would be some overlap, but there would be cooperation. So I think we very quickly settled on Raish and Vandal and Lex. There was some discussion about Queen Bee because I was pitching the Queen Bee that we ended up doing, but I remember Brandon looked her up really quickly and there was a Queen Bee. I think it might have been Lana Lang in a costume or something like that.
Holy cow. No, she was like shape-shifted, I think, into that weird.
I don't remember. All I remember is going, no, this is too silly looking for what. And I'm like, what are you looking at? It shows, I'm like, no, not that Queen Bee. The fact that DC had something like 3 or 4 Queen Bees over its 75-year history or whatever isn't shocking. But once we got focused on the one I was talking about, we liked that idea. That seemed to work for us. I pushed at one point for Wotan, and Brandon had the smarter idea. Look, we've got all these kids. Let's put one really young wild card character on the roster of The Light. And that obviously was Clarion. We wanted one science character, and there was discussion of Ultrahumanite, but at the time, Brandon was like, no talking gorillas. No talking gorillas. Later, we figured out that once we had done Beast Boy with those speakers on his thing, we figured out, okay, we can do the gorilla because it's really just the same technology Brain is using. His brain impulses, whatever the hell that is his words are coming out of speaker, right?
Right.
So that's what Garfield's using. That's what Ultrahumanite's using. His mouth isn't moving. We're hearing his projected thoughts, right? So that was a way for us eventually to use Ultrahumanite without breaking Brandon's rule of no talking gorilla.
It's a good rule. I stand by that rule.
Yeah. But at the time, we were like, no talking to gorillas, so we went with the Brain. And Mala wouldn't be allowed to talk. He could just grunt, And then Ocean Master sort of came in like, well, the ocean is like 3/4 of the earth, so he's the big bad of that world. And so suddenly it all began. I mean, and the process for coming up with our 6 leads wasn't that different a process. It's like you want again, characters with superpowers, characters who just have mad skills. You want to have characters with secrets. It's just about finding the chemistry between the group, right? So we were, in essence, doing the same thing with the light as we did with the team. One thing, though, that was interesting in our early development is that we actually had tiers of the light. So the light were the top 7, and then beneath them were something that we had the working name of the Cosmos, which was like a second tier, which included Ultra Humanite and various other big bads, but not quite as big as our main 7.
Was it that similar group to what was it, the Injustice Society or whatever that came up later? That was the Distraction.
Joker,
Injustice
and
League,
Ivy,
yeah. Except it was going to be part of the whole light hierarchy, and eventually we just said we don't need this. We dumped it, and so we wound up with just our main 7 plus Sportsmaster as their enforcer, and they could make use of anybody. Riddler was sort of their strategist. I don't know if that ever really came through in the show, but that was the idea, is that Riddler had this puzzle mind and he could be a really great strategist for them. So they had different people for different specific roles, like Riddler for that, Sportsmaster for this. But the need for sort of a whole second tier went away. But some of those second tier characters, like Wotan and Ultra Humanite, etc., became the Injustice League, which we used as a feint in later in the season.
It's interesting to me, like thinking about like and characters, disappear and then come in, right? So you had Ocean Master, but then eventually that became Manta. And for me, I'm wondering sport. We talked a lot about Sportsmaster last time, but like Sportsmaster, like that's quite a choice for an enforcer when you have, Slade right there. Right. And then he comes in later. Right. But you'd think that Deathstroke would have been in my head. I'm like, oh, if I was going to do an enforcer and these are like the handful of characters, then Slade would probably have been my top choice. But you went Sportsmaster, I'm assuming because of the tie to Artemis and that kind of thing. And of course, you guys killed it with Sportsmaster, making him actually competent and cool. So it seems like you still had some of these characters in your minds as, some got rotated out and were rotating back in,
Yeah. Anyone that we discussed became fair game down the road, if they didn't fit the specific slot we were looking for.
Right.
Another thing about Slade, Deathstroke, I think he was a pretty big character in the Titans series that came before us. Yeah. And another way to separate was to not go down that road that had been done so well by that team. So, again, another separation. And then, of course, like you said, nice poetry with Artemis and the family angle there.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, we can't let this go unaddressed. What Superboy related trauma do you have with monkeys that you just had a hard line on no talking gorillas? And
no, it was
a hard line you clearly still hold.
The realism.
It's the realism. Yeah. I mean, it's not that I, had a problem with them in the DC universe. It was just in our show for the first season specifically. We were trying so hard to separate from other shows and, really ground our show in reality and give the characters that sense of realism. And we were introducing the audience to the DC universe too, but we were starting from the viewpoint of these young characters that didn't have a lot of experience with the greater fantastical over the top DC universe. And that gave us a place to grow to and introduce the wilder experiences in baby steps as, and then by the time we obviously got to 4th season, compare and contrast with season 1, like that was kind of the goal from the beginning, was to slowly introduce crazier and crazier elements. But Talking Monkeys in first season was a step too far.
Right out.
Non-negotiable.
Well, I think the idea also is that, look, no matter how smart they are, their voice boxes aren't designed for that.
Right.
Their tongues aren't designed for that. So if we're trying to create this facade of realism as an overlay to what we're presenting in season 1, then that just doesn't play. And in fact, that was the same logic eventually that we would use for Beast Boy, which was that, fine, he can turn into a bird, but but unless he's a parrot, he can't talk. He can turn
Mhm.
into a fish, but unless, fish don't talk, they don't have voice boxes designed for that. So we got the idea from Brain that there must be some system that lets it read your thoughts and project out of a little speaker. So my thinking, in my head is that, when Brain got captured, they used his technology. They just stole it and gave it to Beast Boy. One thing I think is interesting, though, is, you see those screens with the lights on it, and those gave us fits, I remember. Like, we started off, the idea was, we don't want to reveal who the light is yet, so we'll put them in silhouette. And then their silhouettes were so distinctive
Yeah.
that we were like,
Who's that bald guy? Wait, who's that guy
we were
with that
like,
hair?
oh, it's a dead giveaway. And then how did we even wind up with those white sort of do you remember it all?
I don't. I mean, we must have given the note to
I feel like it was a Matt Girardi thing.
our effects team, our post effects team that would take animation as it would come in. And every season we had like a budget of being able to throw a few shots to our post effects team that could go in, like get all the layers of every shot from the overseas studio and go into those shots and go through the layers and apply added effects to kind of make them better or fix things if there was a problem. Or in this case, we were using up some of our effects budget just to kind of get us out of this corner that we got ourselves in with the really distinct silhouettes. So we had to, apply an effect. And I'm sure we auditioned a few. I'm sure if it was Matt, or I'm not sure what artist might have done that. Matt Girardi was a big help in the early days, helping us find different effects looks for stuff. Also, the main title sequence, I think, as well. I think he might have designed and animated. So yeah, I'm glad you brought his name up, Greg, because he doesn't get enough credit. He does quite a lot for Warner Brothers Animation and develops quite a few cool looks for us as well.
And with each passing season, as the technology advanced, we could do, we always had a budget for it, but we could do more and more. Like, it also got to the point where our editors, before we even got to our effects guys, our editors could do things that in season 1 would have been effects shots. But by season 4, our editor, Chris, could do a percentage of those so that we weren't eating up our effects budget on certain things that were by then relatively basic. But in season 1, we had both season 1 and 2, we had a phenomenal editor, Joanne Reyes, who was able to do a bunch of stuff. Like if Matt and his team created an effect, often Joanne could just then apply the effect. So we wouldn't have to, again, use our budget. If the effect was created, not always, but sometimes she could just apply that effect and that would save us money.
Like timestamps.
Yeah, like timestamps. Timestamps.
I also love the idea that like you have this pristine version of the light and then just the opposite of every over the top version of like, let's take the CCTV footage and enhance. You're like, dehance. No. I can still tell who that is. Less.
Yeah.
But that is interesting from really interesting from a production standpoint, especially like you're saying, if you establish something as the perfect version, or at least the version you'd like to use moving forward, that effect becomes the thing you can just apply rather than build every single time. Which of course, like you said, is useful for a myriad of reasons. But for the animation studio, was that a thing that you chose, or was it more?
Well, back then we did do tests. So I had done a quick storyboard that I think ended up becoming like the first teaser that we released and took to a convention. And it kind of just felt like a trailer. It was designed to kind of feel like we had animated more than we actually had. It was, like a movie trailer, it feels like there's a whole lot more there and you're just kind of getting the best shots. So I had boarded something that would kind of test out how each studio would handle, for instance, Kid Flash running effects. and a variety of different other things. And we would send that out to a few studios, and then they would, send back animation, and we would kind of pick from there. That's how I remember it.
Most seasons, except for maybe, was it 3 or 4? There was one season where we only used one studio. But I feel like most seasons we were alternating episodes between multiple studios.
Yeah.
Was that for time or like?
Yeah.
Okay.
In those days, they didn't have the capacity.
They didn't. Yeah. I mean, and I, as it progressed too, I don't think we auditioned anymore. Like there were sort of contracts in place, I think, between Warner's and other studios. I think it got businessy. Like it was less about auditioning. And there was so much work going overseas. Like a lot of the studios were super busy and had work. So it was like hard to get studios to, commit for a long period of time.
Or to a show that seemed hard.
Yeah.
Say that. What was that?
To getting a studio to commit, or at least we were bludgeoned with this a lot. Brandon and I, it was like, your show seems too hard. So the studios won't want to do it overseas. I feel like season 3, we really got bludgeoned by that a lot.
Yeah. What in particular? Because you had like a huge cast and there were lots of character designs, or like what was hard?
And the realism of the design style.
The realism of the designs. Yeah. That again and again and again for every season, the closer you try to nudge your designs toward realism, like everybody knows inherently what reality looks like, and it's easier to spot when it goes wrong.
So it's kind of that uncanny valley thing you're trying to avoid in some way.
Exactly. And then getting consistency for that realism from episode to episode, from, because there were multiple teams too. Sometimes within a studio, there's multiple teams, alternating every other episode or something like that. And you would start to see inconsistencies. One team might do realism better and another team not so much. Just line count on characters. Sometimes too many seams, like, a double line to indicate like a really thick seam, that kind of stuff. Those choices, if you think about it, it's like an artist has to draw 2 lines instead of 1. That takes more time. Add that up, at 12 frames a second over the course of, a 20 something minute episode. And yeah, all of those little design choices start to really add up. And it takes more time for the overseas studio to complete the job. And then they can look at our design packets and say, yeah, just too many lines. I don't know that it was necessarily too many characters. I mean, sometimes that was also a production thing just in house, because more characters just takes more time for every single department, more time for Phil to review and go over, more time for our color department to color. And then we've got lighting changes throughout every episode. So that starts to double the workload. So it starts stacking up really fast. And so we had to, work harder at that. I think especially like Greg said, in seasons 3 and 4, coming back after that 5-year break, animation production exploded. I think between seasons 2 and 3, streaming became a thing that wasn't really a thing during our first 2 seasons. And the streaming wars had begun, and all the different companies were trying to get into the game, come up with their own original content, and animation was part of the war. So there were more shows gearing up, going into production. More overseas studios were getting busier than they'd ever been before. And it was becoming really, they had a lot more to say about what shows that they would pick to do, because they were getting flooded with requests from different companies to do work. So that's how it was kind of explained to us, that we had to kind of also do work, not just to make it producible for our side, but also producible and attractive for their side. So it would be worth their while to take the job.
Yeah. So what pops into my head is like when I was younger, not that much younger, I guess. Like our standard thing is 24 to 26 episode seasons, right? Like that's just how shows worked. But like overseas, I'd be watching stuff from the BBC or whatnot, and a whole season of television would be 10, 12 episodes, 8 episodes that are really kind of tightened down somehow in their storytelling. And it seems like if you're looking at something like Arcane, right? Like that's some involved animation going on in that show, but it's a much shorter show, and you guys were doing 26 episodes as well. So it was a larger volume of storytelling, and with you guys, you had everything so planned out and everything was so tight. Like there weren't any there's no skips. There's no skip episodes, right? So everything was really important to put into that, as opposed to some other animated series where it's like, okay, yeah, there is technically a meta plot, but I can show you 8 episodes out of this 26 episode season and you'll get the idea, right? And I can do a curated run. You can't do that with Young Justice. So it seems like there's like more detail, more things there. And then my kids were just noticing again with the Justice League Unlimited, they kept asking me about like, why is Superman and Batman's chins gigantic, right? Why is their chests huge? Why do they have tiny feet? Right. So because, they've watched a lot of animation, obviously, but we had just done, like 4-season run of Young Justice. So there's something about, I'm guessing that style, when you do a stylized way of character design, sometimes that makes that easier to animate because it's almost like non-human in so many ways. Where you guys, the fluid movements, the fight scenes, even like when you're watching Black Canary fight versus Batman fight, right? Versus Dick fight versus Tim versus Nightwing, they're all so different. But because they have that, what you're saying, that almost more realistic framing of their bodies, I almost like ironically, you'd think that would make it easier because it's more human-like, but it doesn't, though. Am I right?
Drawing humans is really hard.
Yeah. And again, one of the reasons it's hard is because the audience knows what a human looks like. If you stylize it like Bruce did for the DC animated universe,
Bruce Timm,
you've got much more flexibility, and if
it's forgiving.
Yeah, it's forgiving. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah.
But what we were doing in Phil's style, which was very intentional, and we knew what that meant. It's not like we were like surprised by it, but it's way less forgiving, and it makes it harder to animate. And we'd get footage back sometimes that was awful. We'd call retakes when we had to, and sometimes we had to live with certain shots that you're like, that one's not great, but it's workable,
Human emotions too. It's not even just the physicality of human bodies, but human emotions too, trying to get a real expressive face that doesn't have like, one eye slightly larger than the other. Or honestly, one of the top things that I was fixing constantly was just pupils pointed in different directions, not lining up.
Yeah, that was a whole thing. Brandon would literally go on Photoshop. When we'd go through calling retakes, we had a whole category of retakes. Well, that's a Brandon shot. That's a Brandon shot. And he would have to personally redraw things in Photoshop over and over and over again.
Yeah, we have the editor just export every single frame, and then I can take those frames. And to be fair and honest about it, sometimes the mistakes, they weren't that bad. They weren't that many frames. They were actually pretty easy fixes to just nudge that one pupil back over, for example, just to keep harping on that one, just to nudge it over a few frames. And then that was easy. But like sometimes acting beats were just not working. And, if I could just sort of do a draw over and just change the face, it was really easy for the editor to just like pop that in as a layer sometimes. And just like the fix happens right there. So I mean, it's, a whole rabbit hole of discussion about all those little individual fixes. But yeah, some would go to me if I could easily just fix them frame by frame. They were more complicated. They would either go back to our overseas studio, or sometimes they would go to our post VFX team and they could help us out with some fixes too.
Did you also, for season 1, am I misremembering this? Did you go to Korea?
Yeah, I did for the first season, just to kind of help kick off. Like it really does help start the relationship with your overseas studio, just to kind of have that partnership. It really kind of sucks to just kind of have an email relationship. Like when you can go over and just meet the artists and hang out and actually discuss with the help of an interpreter, what the goals of the show are, and, take some questions and just have some discussions and stuff. It really helps kind of smooth out the relationship starting off a big giant show like we did. I didn't get to do that too often. I'm trying to remember. I know I did it first season. I don't know if I did it again.
I remember without bitterness that initially we were both going to go. And then they were like, no, Brandon's going to go alone this time. And you can go next time. And then there was no next time.
Well, all that comes out of the budget. Those airline tickets.
No, I know.
So.
I had a question written down, but I know that we've answered it. So I'll state it, I guess, than rather actually ask a question, because one of the big things is, what was YJ's cornerstone? Like, when you guys are developing all these things, but it's obvious. I mean, if it's not obvious to the listener, I feel like the answer is it needs to be a level of realism to the world that you're creating. Because like you said, with the Bruce Timm universe, everything has to agree with what's been established with that universe. And so the same thing I feel like holds true with everything that we keep talking about, is that the cornerstone is, yeah, there are superpowers. Yes, there is magic. Yes, there is advanced technology. So we don't wave our hand, though, of he's a gorilla, he can talk. It's okay. It's why can he talk? And so I'm quickly realizing that that's the obvious cornerstone for all of YJ, because there are shows that are whole cloth. They make things on their own. And this is not true. At the time, you're working off of decades and decades worth of source material. And I've seen other shows that do it really well, where they'll look at the source material and they'll say, did we make something better? And if the answer is no, then we should probably look directly to the source material. But yeah, it doesn't feel like that was the cornerstone. The cornerstone is, does this work with the reality that we've created? And how does it work with the reality?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think that we were trying very hard to create a cohesive and coherent version of 70 plus years of continuity. And I've told this joke so many times. I'm sure I've told it on this show, but it's, it comes down to even like, oh, there are 4 blonde female teenage archers in the DC universe.
Yeah.
Now, in hindsight, you sort of go, why would you need 4? But, at the time that various people were making them, they just kept, oh, this will be fun. We'll have this teenage archer. Oh, we'll make her blonde, and no one sort of thought about it in these larger terms, because they're doing it in the moment. But we have the advantage of 2020 hindsight, right? So we want there to be this coherence to it, this cohesiveness to it. So things like, the universe we're seeing just a fraction of it, right? But it's all got to fit together in some way. And this often led us to these sort of amazing discoveries. Some of them we planned in advance and some we didn't. But, the connection of Beast Boy's origin to Miss Martian, or the connection of Dr. Fate to Vandal Savage, of Nabu being Vandal's son, that one in particular was something, I mean, we're getting seasons ahead of ourselves now, but that was something that we discovered along the way. We had come up with this idea at some point that Vandal had been Marduk. And then we're looking up Marduk. Oh, in the video game, Vandal was Marduk, right? Then we're looking up Marduk, and it's like, one of Marduk's sons was Nabu. We're like, wait, Nabu? And I remember having a conversation with Mike Carlin, who was our liaison with DC, and him going, no, there's never been any connection between Vandal and Fate. You can't do that. And I was like, we have to do it.
No, there is now. Like, forever.
Yeah. And it's like, it was so dramatically great that, we couldn't not do it. And, Mike came around to it. It wasn't like a fight or anything like that. But when you have that advantage of this sort of hindsight sort of thing, you make these kinds of discoveries and you find ways to lock it in. Even something like you mentioned, Neil, about using, genomes, G-trolls, G-elves, G-dwarves, G-sprites, It's sort of like, okay, let's unify all this stuff. It's not just like we've got, all right, we came up with 5 models. It's like, no, someone working at Cadmus was into Tolkien or whatever, but
right.
They're like, we need one creature that's a warrior with claws and is going to go in there. We need one creature that's big. It's all about the strength. We need a creature that's just the servant. getting things done. Another one that's literally lighting the light bulbs, right? And it's like, all right, well, I need to name all these things, so let me name them after, fantasy creatures. Not that they are fantasy creatures. It's just, all right, we put a G in front of it, and suddenly it's a sci-fi thing. And Double X, by the way, I don't know if this is clear, but Double X was the one and only G Goblin.
Well, that
there
tracks.
were many sprites, many gnomes, many trolls, many elves, but there was only one goblin, and that was Double X.
I will say, to speak directly to 2 points of realism, and it was in the first 2 episodes when the showing and telling of explaining how Cadmus gets away with using up this much energy. It's so small, like in the grand scheme of the show, but like it's so important because that's a thing people don't do. That's a thing shows don't do. They don't tell you why a thing happened, and you're left to assume, and maybe you figure something out on your own. But the idea of being like, no, there it is. The big sparky ones. They're why all of this gets to work, and no one just shows up in Cadmus wondering, why does the power grid keep destroying itself on all the things you need? Also, I have definitely, because I worked in IT for so long, I definitely worked at a place where all of our, you couldn't have done this, but all of our server names were Legolas and Frodo and Gimli. So to speak directly to the realism, spot on, because nerds are going to nerd any chance they get.
Right, exactly. That was what we were thinking. I like to think it was Spence. That Amanda Spence was the one giving all the fun names.
Well, if you think you had Genome and it just makes sense, and then someone's like, "Oh, yeah, I get it. We can name them."
It's
all.
like Naboo being the son of Marduk. You just got to run with it at that point. Like that's just the way that story goes now, right?
By the time it became apparent, no one could stop her.
Right.
But I also think it's interesting that who's the true hero of this episode? Really, it's Double X.
Double X.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And he arranged the whole thing, set the fire. At the surface level, lured them down by just barely appearing before the elevator doors close,
right.
Wakes them up, gives them hints about where to go. He's hiding the fact from his bosses. They know he's telekinetic, but they think only the gnomes are telepathic.
Right.
He's hiding the fact that he's telepathic from them. And then, he's the one going around calling everyone brother because, and he has this great speech where he is expecting Connor to use his freedom to free them all.
Yeah.
I think there was a point further down the road where Brandon and I sat down and sort of were like, Connor hasn't really stepped up.
No, he has not.
And we realized he's got to do that, and so that even Xenomorph City, which is, we depicted at one point, and Connor's attitude is like, isn't this great? And Double X is like, well,
could be better.
It's better than where we were, at Cadmus, but we're still not accepted. We still have to hide who we are. We can't be who we are.
Yeah.
When are you going to do what I, freed you to do? So I'm really, even in hindsight, now looking at it at the episode last night, at episode 2 last night, and going, oh, it's Double X. He's the hero of this episode. Yeah. Our four guys do some journeyman work there, but it's Double X who makes this all come together.
My favorite is when he shoots at them to force them down the path. Right,
that's
immediately is like, they're headed straight for it. I don't know. How do they know where it's at?
I was thinking when Greg was like, give them hints on where to go. And I'm like, with exploding video game barrels? That's basically what the hint was. Like, I'm going to blow you down the right hallway.
You were talking about the realism. I wanted to bring in something else that popped up to me as I was kind of rewatching that second episode. And I got to call out both the music and the lack of music. Because that was something I know I'd felt kind of strongly about in the beginning, was using less music than the average quote unquote cartoon show. Didn't want it to be wall to wall music. It's not what I see in the movies that I like. And that absence of music sometimes introduces a lot of realism. But then when the music does come in, we had a lot of discussions with the Dynamic Music Partners, TMP.
Who, by the Way also had to audition.
Right. That's true. And we, I guess, had these discussions with many times over, but, how could we come up with a sort of musical sound that would separate us from other shows, something that sort of captured a sort of youthful feel and contrast from the superhero music that we had heard before. And so this episode does kind of show that a little, because we sort of saved traditional sort of symphonic orchestral music for the Justice League, and that became a signature sound for all the grown-ups, and we kind of leaned more into synthy kind of sounds for the younger kids, and less orchestral, more atmospheres often, just longer tones and stuff that sort of supported emotions but didn't get in the way or didn't lead too much. I really liked kind of rewatching just the opening of the second episode, where you've got, our heroes in pods and Superboy just staring at them. And that silence is what makes it eerie. And I kind of felt like, I think other shows would have put something in there musically, and I'm glad we didn't. So that was something, I was trying to feel that out too, because I think I was often over on that note, like maybe pushing too hard for silences. And that's where Greg and I had a lot of discussions about how far is too far, what's not enough, where should we just make a daring choice and go no score here? Mm-hmm. And that was also a discussion with DMP, getting their vibe on it as well.
They were talking about the interview. We were talking to them about, again, jumping ahead a little bit, but like the flip side of that too, which was the episode, was it episode 7, season 3? I think it was when Vandal Savage is telling his whole story, and it's out in space. And so they were like able to fill that space like with music, because it was quiet because they were out in space. Right. So the sound effects didn't need to carry the thing, the kind of music stepped in. And
because they can't.
Yeah.
Because there's no sound in space.
Right.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate this.
It was really big on there being no sound in space.
Yeah. But listen,
gorillas can't talk and there's no sound in
that's
space.
Right. You got it.
These are the
something
rules
about sound. Yeah. I was a little shocked when you said you had to interview TMP. I guess that makes sense. You had to audition them, but like their history is impressive.
I had worked with them on Spectacular, but we, for this show, they had to, that was just the way the game was played. They had to audition, and and obviously they were great. And
yeah, they're incredible
for us. And now I can't imagine going with anyone else. But before we even got to these 2 episodes, they did some, tryout stuff, and on some footage we had, might have been that little teaser trailer that you did, Brandon. I can't remember now, but
is that teaser trailer out in the world somewhere?
It was, so it probably still is. I remember Aquaman's model wasn't done yet. So it's different. The Aquaman model in that teaser trailer is not the final model for Aquaman. I feel it's like the hairier Aquaman.
Yeah, he's got long hair.
Long hair, yeah. Longer hair and longer beard. Before we had locked down our final version, it might have been an earlier version of something Phil had drawn before we locked in our personal version of it. I don't remember what they used to audition for, but I remember that they had to. I will say that Brandon's musical sensibility, I would go in to the meetings with DMP and Brandon and feel like I was getting an education, because even though I've done this for a very long time, I don't necessarily feel that I'm all that smart about music and shows. There's certain specific things that I look for on occasion that I get a kind of mania about, I guess. But generally, in terms of step aside for Brandon, because I felt like his sensibilities for the show were just right on. And on Spider-Man, I felt the same way with Vic Cook when I did Spider-Man. It was like what he had much more sophisticated thoughts about the music than I did. Every once in a while there'd be something I didn't like or something I loved or whatever, and I would give notes, but I always felt like Brandon was stronger on music than I was. I'm just not that attuned to it. Bad pun.
I had a passion for it just from years of listening to soundtracks while I was doing storyboards or directing. So, often kind of picking, probably other storyboard artists do this too. You pick a score to some movie that has some sort of relevance to whatever you're storyboarding. So I don't know. I'd been listening to scores for so long. You just starts to get into your head and you're taking it apart in your head. Cause I'm not musical. I can't play any instruments or anything, but I understand how the music is helping the story or in some cases hurting the story. And I'm getting sensibilities of my own of when to do something or when not to do something.
And you would pull out samples of things that you would give to DMP and say, not this, but something
in that neighborhood.
Yeah, because I think I learned quickly in working with DMP that I didn't have always the vocabulary because I'm not musical. There is a certain vocabulary that composers have, musical people have to describe certain things that they want to do in the music. And I don't have any of that. So I would struggle for words in talking to a composer and have to, go scramble and find an example from music. And then they would understand what I'm trying to say. So, and I think I'd learned that James Tucker had taken me along for some of the scoring with DMP, I think on Batman, the Brave and the Bold. And so I kind of got to lurk, and just listen to James and watch his back and forth with DMP. And I learned a lot in that, but, also kind of realized I don't have the vocabulary for this. And with the first season of Young Justice, I made a soundtrack. I put one together, just, pulling pieces of music that I thought I wanted influence from so that also Greg and I could have a discussion and be on the same page before we meet with composers.
You made a Young Justice mixtape?
I did. Yeah, basically. Yeah. Because that became my starting point for a discussion. Like, here's what I like about this track. Here's what I like about this track. And it's just a more tangible way to start a conversation.
That reminds me, you did the same thing for visuals way early on, showed me specific scenes or sequences from Ghost in the Shell and various other things.
Yeah.
So that we could talk about, so that we could have a vocabulary, may not be quite the right word, but in essence, we could have a common vocabulary to discuss visually what we were looking for the show to be as well. So yeah, that was always like a tool of yours to sort of not this, but this, or this, but not this,
And in writing too. I think those are my baby steps into writing because at some point I got tired of just giving like either verbal notes or like a 2 or 3 sentence note on a script. And it just became easier for me to write more to explain something that I was pitching to Greg. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I would just rewrite a page, for example, and then give it to Greg and be like, take it or leave it. I don't care, but this is what I'm thinking. And it was the best way for me to sort of communicate what I was after. I didn't think a 2 or 3 sentence note would do it. I wanted to articulate it more and, get my idea across and then
you're
leave it to
showing,
Greg.
Not telling.
Yeah.
In a way,
I guess.
In
a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Directing tools.
So I've got great news, Rich. I'll see the link you sent and I will up you another 30 seconds worth of this teaser trailer. And the only reason we still have it is shout out to Yogi Bear from 2010 because this trailer is at the front of that DVD. DVD kids, if you don't know what those are, god dang it. All that's going away and I don't need to yell at clouds right now. But yeah, so it's on there, and it's just like you said, it's a trailer where I don't see almost none of this made like the full show. But I mean, like you said, with teasers and like
I'll take a look at what you sent. So I also found something too, but there was some similar scenes. Like there's a Miss Martian like blowing up an airplane, but it looks like it's what eventually became the two. Things crashing together, the 2 drones crashing together.
McGann blowing up the airplane is also in the opening of every episode in season 1. And it's a different airplane than what the drones she blows up later in the series.
Interesting.
I would say the one that is like spot on is the Artemis scene, though. Like that is like verbatim what is in.
Well, send that out because I don't think I saw that one. The one I found was about 30 seconds, but like half of it was talking about something else, and then it was just
this one's quick. 50. The one I found is 55.
All right, cool. Well, we'll put those. Neil will put the link in the show notes for people.
But all of that reminds me of a different question I had that popped in, that we were talking about all the animation of everything. And I had thought this while I was watching the episode earlier today. Was there a script for the opening, like for the theme song opening, or was all of that just kind of like, was that anything that either of you wrote out to like tell someone, well, these are the things that need to be in the opening? Or was that more of the artist just kind of riffing?
I think that is stuff from the test board I did. And just kind of put together by Matt Girardi, if I remember correctly, in an interesting way. So yeah, just
with a lot of additional effects. I mean, like additional layers and additional elements to give it that sort of spy show feel that we were going for. You know, sort of modern. So not the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible, but the Peter Graves Mission.
Yeah, right.
Take that idea and modernize that, which Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible also did off of the Peter Graves thing, much more directly. But I think it's that idea. We wanted, again, to establish our show as more spy show than a superhero show. We were doing superheroes as covert ops. And that's, you know, obviously an interesting thing in this episode at the end is Batman, Flash, Aquaman, all having this conversation with the teens about, okay, you insist on doing this, get on board or get out of the way, right? Which is a line from my Disney days, how we felt about Eisner. If Eisner approved a show, everyone at Disney had to get on board or get out of the way. That's where I pulled that line from. And you guys insist on doing this, but you're going to do it on our terms. So you're going to go on real missions, but they're covert missions. We're the ones with the big targets on our chest. And that line is inspired from the Frank Miller Return of the Dark Knight, where, you know, Frank had this clever idea. Why does Batman have this big yellow circle around this bat? It's like you're literally hitting a target. It's like, yeah, because it's much easier to armor my chest than it is to armor my head. So if everyone's shooting at the big yellow bat on my chest, so Flash is like showing they all have these big emblems on their chest, right? So we're the ones with the big targets on our chest. That's not going to be you. You're going. And then, of course, as our series played out, our kids wound up doing these ridiculously dangerous missions. But in theory, they're all thinking, all right, you'll go in, you'll do these quick covert ops, and you'll get out. Which, you know, by episode 4, we sort of disabuse of the notion that it's going to be that easy, right? But in theory, it sounded like something that would make sense to guys like Aquaman and Batman and Flash. And, you know, setting up the Red Tornado as their, in essence, dead mother, and Black Canary as their trainer, and then introing Miss M. And it's a sweet little scene, actually, that scene there.
See, these are my questions. These are my notes. I said all of my questions were the last 30 seconds of the episode, and I wasn't joking.
Go for it.
So we've touched on before about like the makeup of the team and the decisions that went into the original 6, how Artemis was like, well, we need an archer and we can bring in Sportsmaster and all of that. So I was curious, beyond just we need a girl, we need an alien, was there anything specific about McGann that was like, this is a good 5th member to bring in? Or was it just kind of like, well, this makes sense because Martian Manhunter's on the League?
No, it's the whole Secrets and Lies.
Yes.
That whole theme, which was so big for a spy show and for a teen show. You know, in superheroes, that's an element, but it's, you know, hit or miss to me. But for a spy show, it's essential. And for a show about teenagers, keeping secrets from your friends, telling lies to cover things. And Miss Martian just had this background, which we then, again, tried to make more cohesive and coherent. But she had this background that was full of lies. She was presenting herself as green when she was actually white. I still have some regrets about aspects of, I kind of wish we had gone with green and gray as opposed to green and white. Because Martians traditionally, you have green men from Mars, and you have the grays, right? But also because I think just the word white has all this baggage to it, which is why in season 4 we switched to Shen and Garoon and all this stuff. There just was this sort of reverse baggage. I know I don't like monolithic racial characterizations or anything like that, So to me, I think the big reason for Miss Martian, as opposed to, like I said last episode, the Wonder Girls were temporarily off limits for reasons that we never got an explanation for. And then later it was like, yeah, you can use them. And we never got an explanation for why suddenly we could. But in terms of all that stuff, she had a very interesting power set, which we also codified because, when Men from Mars was created, he started off as sort of one thing, and then he became sort of like they just kept adding powers, and he's
like Superman plus.
Yeah. He just kept getting more and more powers and more powers, and we sort of stopped and said, okay, look, basically got telepathy, telekinesis, and shape-shifting. Using those things in combination, there's a lot of things she's capable of, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Martian vision, no. We're not going to do that. We're not going to just keep layering on additional abilities. So we codified all that stuff in a more fixed way. I remember having conversations about the green and the white Martians, and even having a little conversation about the reds. I don't know if we'd come up with the yellows yet, but I think the yellow thing was actually inspired by a line in season 1 where Miss Martian talks about
the sorcerer priests or something.
Of Mars,
priests and stuff like that. But I remember we talked about, okay, this is what we're going to do with this. We're going to take the red race, which they created for Gem, son of Saturn, and we're going to say those were originally supposed to be Martians anyway, so we're just going to pull all that in. But the main two were going to be the green and the white. So it was just about, she had secrets she was keeping. And then I don't remember when the Hello Megan stuff became part of it, but it just seemed organically natural. If she doesn't really look anything like, if no Martian looks anything really like a human, right? Then where is she getting this from? Oh, where do we all get stuff from? We get it from watching television. And the idea that John has been sending TV signals to Mars since the 1950s really appealed to me.
It's a good bit.
And suddenly it all, seemed to fit together. And that's when a show's working, when you're making discoveries like Naboo or like Garfield or whatever, and you're like, oh, it's working. It just, it just seems to fit. It just seems to make sense.
Bonus for me was the telepathic comms. That certainly has Ghost in the Shell vibes, where it's very technological, that the team can talk to each other without lips moving. They're sharing some sort of, cyberspace connection, but doing it in a DC way with Miss Martian. I don't recall seeing it in any other animated thing. I could be wrong. I would love to be corrected. Please correct me if somebody knows otherwise, but I feel like we kind of might have done a new cool thing there. I don't know. It is and it isn't, because I borrowed it, but just, spun it in a DC way.
Well, you yes-anded on the idea, right?
Yeah.
And I honestly, I don't know if Neil does this, but like I have stolen that for pretty much everything I do in the RPG industry. Like if I have players.
You're saying, I don't know if Neil communicates telepathically.
Yes, that's right.
Do it all the time.
All the time. Constantly.
It's a muscle. I've been trying.
I know.
It's not worked out yet, but it's a muscle like anything else, okay?
Gonna get
But like in Descent into Midnight, the RPG I helped design, psionics are a very big part of it. And one of the things being around a table, a bunch of gamers at a table is always like, I don't know, do you have that information? And I figured this out. And do I tell them? And I just hate all of that. I'm like, look, unless you tell me specifically you're not telling somebody something, then everybody knows what you know, and then can we move on with the story, right? But if I can get a character in there that has any kind of telepathy of any kind, I'm like, nope, McGann, boom, you're just all linked. Let's just move, we've got this. Let's just move forward. And you guys can communicate. And in Descent into Midnight, it became a whole, like, it's a central part of like the conceit of the group is that they can communicate through this psychic way station called a sanctuary, so that you can have care. It's like, hey, if you want to be on the other side of the world doing something, you can still communicate with your friends. And also you can help them. You can inspire them. You can give them information. You can give them knowledge. You can give them advice, right? Kind of like whatever, like, you know, like Firestorm with Dr. What's Stern in his head, right? Like you can get that information from that. So like this thing that you did, aside from like the coolness also of the animation, there's something cool about them having a conversation and their mouths just aren't animated to move. I don't know what it is about that, but there was something that was just like, this is so well done. And it works so well for Covert Ops team, for teenagers and wanting to have conversations like Zatanna points out, all of that. It's great.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, it also works so well for this being a teen team and a teen TV show. I'm like, that's just the group chat. That's just the group chat. You're all texting under the table while the adults are talking. I'm like, that's perfect.
And it becomes the snake eating its tail because, like, obviously there are it eases production in certain ways because you're not having to animate certain aspects. But it goes back to the first thing that you had said, where if you have a face that looks like a face is supposed to, then it can emote the way that a face does, the way we understand. Because I think about the first episode when it becomes very clear that Green Arrow got a little mouthy and told a little too much but everyone, that's not real. There's one in space. And everyone reacts, but there's no words.
Yeah.
But we all do know that they react and we know how they feel about that line. And the same thing becomes true when you have the telepathic conversations. And yeah, way down the road, we get to, I guess the first instance of a private telepathic conversation where like the background blurs. I mean, that's me jumping very far ahead too. But even that subtle nuance blew my mind the first time I caught it.
That was fun. Yeah, way down the road in season 4 and coming up with, the visuals for both private communications, but also all Martian minds linked. What does that experience look like visually? But yeah, going back to what you said too, that was another thing that struck me about watching the second episode is that exchange between Superboy seeing Superman for the first time and then drawing his, he's got this tear across his chest that he kind of unfolds and reveals to Superman, the S symbol there.
Yeah.
And the reaction from Superman, and then the reaction from Superboy, seeing the reaction of Superman, unspoken stuff like that. It's pretty sophisticated, hard to animate. but those are the kinds of textures that really excited us.
Pain. I don't mean physical pain, but emotional pain.
Yeah.
They're not shouting and screaming. That is hard to handle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where this started telling, like, even from that first couple of episodes that I watched in November of whatever, I was like, oh, like, it's what don't you say, right? Don't have the gorillas talking. See where you can have no music, and what can we say without saying things? And not a lot of, I mean, animation is in the US, a lot of times it's the whole point is like being over the top, being big, like showing big emotions, like, and you guys were doing something significantly more subtle.
The thing that I was thinking is that Clark sees his face, right?
Right.
And that's not the face he sees in the mirror every day. He's, 30? I don't know. I can't remember. I've got it in the time, but I don't know. But that's a face he recognizes as having seen in the mirror, 15 years ago or so. He can't not recognize it.
Right.
It's like, if someone shows me a photo of me at age 15, it's not like I'm going to go, who's that guy?
Right.
I may say that as a joke, but I recognize that guy more than I recognize the face I see in the mirror today.
Yeah.
And, so he sees that face. There's no way he doesn't recognize it, but computing it, processing that is a whole other thing. And then when Superboy pulls that up and you see the S symbol, and suddenly, to me, I don't want to, it's a violation.
Mm-hmm.
He realizes whether it was Luther or whoever, he was violated.
He didn't choose any of that.
It takes him an entire season, really, to not blame the result of the violation for the violation, And he knows better on one level. He's not actively cruel to this kid, but the cruelty's there nevertheless. When every time he sort of ditches him, every time he says to Batman, "No, you deal with him. I can't." There's a cruelty there that he is dodging, and it takes him a while. And so one of the reasons in season 4 we have that scene when he thinks Connor has died. We have this scene with Lois where and it's a beautiful scene, I think, between Lois and Clark with Nolan and Gray, where he breaks down. And it's not about, on one level, it's not about the fact that Superboy's dead. It's about, how could I have been so cruel to someone?
I wasted so much time.
Yeah, I wasted so much time. He's my brother. And I do think that was a big shift that we intentionally made, is that as long as everyone was telling him, that's your son, he couldn't deal with that. But once they adjusted to, let's not make it father-son. Let's make it big brother, younger brother, that was a relationship that they could both get behind and that it could work for them. And we'll let Pa and Ma Kent be the parent, of both of us. But we can be brothers and we can unite. It gets said in the first episode, everyone else is categorizing them as father and son, and that becomes even more difficult for both of them. But getting that to play in that silent moment, and then all he says is, well, I better go help them with that blockbuster creature. We know they don't need any help. He just wanted to get out of Dodge, right? I also want to sort of make a point, something that Brandon said earlier about the orchestral stuff when the Justice League shows up at the end. That was a little bit of a fight with DC. This was before Carlin. I can't remember who was it Ivan Cohn back then? I can't remember. They're like, well, Captain Marvel and Captain Atom and both Hawks and two Green. You don't need all these people. I'm like, no, you're not getting it. We want them to come down like the gods of Olympus. We want the Justice League to seem so overpowered. You've got Captain Atom, Captain Marvel, Superman. You've got 3 guys at that mega level. You've got 2 Green Lanterns, 2 Hawks. You've got a magician, which Conan O'Brien made a lot of fun of, and Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman, Batman. I wanted it to feel like these are the gods in comparison to these 4 kids who just by the skin of their teeth survived this thing. And so that when they stand up, they're not standing up to their mentors. They're not standing up to a few adult superheroes. They're standing up to the gods from Olympus. And that was sort of a key moment for me early on. Like, I knew I wanted to build to that. But getting permission to have all those characters in the league simultaneously was surprisingly difficult. I was sort of like, why do you care?
Yeah, why does it matter?
This is what we want to do. Why do you care? But I wasn't allowed to say it that way. Sam kept saying, that's Sam Register, our boss, kept saying, that's not a good way to get your way. He's like, so, we tried to explain it and they eventually said yes. But I remember it was a little fight that sort of caught me off guard, that they were really bothered by that initially.
The only thing I think of is like they were thinking like, oh, you can't handle this. Like, why are you muddling up the show or something? Or like the focus? Are you going to lose your focus? Or
I think that there was always this sort of impulse to sort of say, here's who is in the Justice League right now. Use this group.
Okay.
And we were like, no, we're going to borrow from different eras. Captain Marvel was never in the Justice League. Yeah, he was. He was in Justice League for a little bit when Mark Damatis and Keith Giffen and Kevin Maguire took over. He was in the Justice League. They're like, that was like 4 issues. It was the only time. And I'm like, that's fine.
I could not think of a more bold stance to take than insert character wasn't in the Justice League at this point. That's a bold stance.
Yeah, because it's been everyone at some
in
point.
General. Yeah.
I mean,
and they would say Zatara wasn't in the Justice League. Use Zatanna. I'm like, we're gonna use Zatanna. We're gonna use her as no, she's Batman's age. I'm like, no, she's really not. I know that in the DCAU she was Batman's age, but that's a new thing. She was always younger. We've got an actual daughter and father scenario. All these other guys are nephews or nieces or clones or wards or whatever. It's like we've actually got father and daughter. We're not going to skip that one. And they're like, but Zatara's way older than all the rest of these guys. I'm like, actually, Zatara and Superman both appeared for the first time in Action Comics #1. So you got to figure, sure, Zatara's a little bit older than Superman, but in this version of the DC universe, they can be more or less the same age. They can be contemporaries. And getting them, that was one of the reasons that we did the whole Earth 16 thing in the first place, was to sort of say, guys, get your heads out of the ideas that we're adapting one of your universes, either Earth 2 or Earth 1 or post-crisis Earth. We're not doing any of that. This is our own Earth. Give us a number.
Yeah.
They gave us 16, told us it was free and clear. Later, we discovered it wasn't. It was too late, because among other things, 16 members of the Justice League come down, all 16 members.
So I and my role on the show has to ask this question. So the I like your t-shirt moment at the end of this episode is very good on many levels, not just because it's adorable and I will stand in that position forever, but because it also establishes some of McGann's powers up front for those of us, me, who had no context for this character. But it also makes that initial spark of connection between her and Connor very immediately obvious. It's clear from day one that's like, oh, this is going to be a thing. Cool. Love to see where this goes. Even though it's not a thing in the comics pre-Young Justice. So what inspired that choice? How did you guys kind of find that relationship and decide that was something you were going to explore even this early on in the series?
It wasn't like this was an accident. We clearly planned to do that, but I don't remember where it came out of. I want to say something here that sounds logical to me, but I don't actually know if it's true, which is that we had our angry young man, right? And then we had this really sweet young girl. And so that notion of the two of them coming together, bashing up against each other briefly, but then ultimately realizing how much they care about each other appealed to us. I also think that the notion that, oh, who's the most powerful character in our show? Clearly it's Superboy, right? I mean, he's the clone of,
No, not even close.
Right.
Hard pass.
The Martian's here. Everybody run. Yeah.
I mean, Emily, we stole it from you, that the goddess line. What was that line?
You're a ball of sunshine
and a terrifying demigod.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, we literally stole that from you for season 3 or 4.
Me and
4.
Brendan Conway.
Yes.
I can't take all the credit. That is also him from our actual play of
our
both of us playing
RPG
off of each other.
Play, yeah.
Because we leaned hard into McGann is terrifying when let loose when playing that game. That's also where Galadriel Darkness McGann comes from, as a phrase that we use too often.
That's right.
Well, but that's something that, again, we built into the show, that we built too in that we had planned, was that we were going to discover incrementally just how powerful McGann was. From the shape-shifting standpoint, like, she can't phase through walls at the beginning. And that was another thing, that we were starting these guys these characters at they're young, and maybe they'll get better at certain aspects of these things, and maybe they won't. But Superboy is never going to be able to fly without those patches, that kind of thing. But we were going to incrementally reveal that telekinetically, she's a typical Martian. Shape-shifting wise, typical Martian. In fact, maybe even a little behind because she can't phase, right? She can't density shift very well. But telepathically, so there's the 3 pillars of the Martian superpowers that we established. Telepathically, Martian Manhunter are sitting there going, or down the road is going to sit there and go, I never encountered levels like hers, or whatever his line is. But and so this idea that you sort of begin with this notion that she's got some interesting powers, but they're not that impressive, and he is Superboy and he's super strong and all this stuff. And then, over time that shifts into, okay, who's really the powerhouse here? I think that's very appealing. But if you're asking me, did we think through all that at the beginning? It makes sense that we might have, but I don't.
Just say yes, Greg. Yes, we planned this all.
Do you remember, Brandon?
I don't. I look at that scene that you brought up, Emily, and I always wince at the changing of the clothes. The shape-shifting Martian clothes was an ongoing battle in every single season, trying to get that animation right. So I look at that scene very differently. But that was a whole other thing. I want to say Greg came up with that. I don't think I did, but executing that and trying to make it look like the clothes were a separate entity from the skin, to make sure it didn't look like, well, it's her skin transforming into clothing. The clothing had to feel completely separate.
Beast Boy, when it would go down to a collar, when he turned into an animal and back, it was always like, oh my God, why is it so hard?
Make sure and making sure it doesn't get ahead of his human anatomy and reveal something that's not safe for television.
Hey, or have to address the terrifying, like, how does a horse wear pants? We don't, you don't want to deal with that either.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were constantly battling with any clothing transformation that she had. Like, they would sometimes the animation would come back and if her cape was appearing or disappearing, they just do it from the bottom up. But what that would mean is that there'd be like gaps where it's like, well, no, it's got to be fluid because it's all one piece, really, kind of thing. And you can't have the cape appear before the piece of it that's attached to her back.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out what you were saying. Oh, I get it.
Me
I get
either.
it.
And then I did.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not magic, right? Yeah.
Right. It's not. It's an organic thing.
And that's high concept, and having to explain that first to storyboard artists and get it drawn right in the storyboard, but then translate that to Korean and get a Korean team to also understand the concept and then animate it appropriately.
Yikes.
Was just an unexpected
It's very
challenge.
easy to say she shapeshifts and very difficult to figure out, okay, but like how?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Because that was the thing.
Right.
We didn't want to do the sort of live action X-Men Mystique thing where, okay, actually she's just naked all the time. We were giving her this Martian organic clothing that she could control with her mind to shapeshift it into things. But it really was this one piece, material, organic material. So it had to shapeshift organically, not magically. And it couldn't just change when she changed. It was a separate thing. And there were a lot of things that we did to ourselves. Frankly. Again, timestamps. But there were just things. There were things that
those nuances
that we came up with, and then we were like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be hard now forever."
Yeah, you couldn't go the Sailor Moon route and be like, "Look, magical girl transformation. We already have it animated. Just put it in next time."
We did that with Zatanna. But
Yes.
Again.
Zatanna's seen Sailor Moon. McGann hasn't gotten to Mars yet.
It's something I hadn't thought about in animation before. Like I didn't know why more shows hadn't leaned into realism. And then you find out that the more you want realism, the more you need these incredibly precise nuances, both in writing and acting and animation and in design. And every one of those is expensive, I mean, probably in a dollar count, but also in time, just time consuming to pull off, and also in skill. Not everybody is locked in on how to execute something with realism in every single department. And that takes like kind of next level skill to get right. And if it comes in short, those are notes, another round to try to execute it to get it closer to realism. I remember watching a documentary about Johnny Quest, the old Hanna-Barbera series, and I think it only lasted one season. And I think one of the reasons, at least in this documentary I was watching, was it was too difficult to pull off. There wasn't any really, I don't know of any animation at the time that was trying to do what Johnny Quest did.
That's what made it. That's why it became such a cult thing. Because it was so, it was so cool though. When I was a kid, I loved that show.
You can go back and watch it now, and from scene to scene, sometimes things like, I don't remember all the episodes, or I know they had like an abominable snowman, and like you go back and you watch some of those scenes, and some of them look a little bit Flintstones like, and it's because, well, that scene, they needed to send that. There was like a Flintstones animator that was free that day. So he got that shot with that abominable snowman, and it kind of inherited some of those Flintstones designisms. And for that one shot, it doesn't really look like it's Doug Wildey, right? Doug Wildey's the original Johnny Quest creator and artist. And it didn't have that realism. And you get that, with Young Justice as well from your animation team. You might have people that maybe just came off a show that was a little more cartoony, design team, storyboard artists, everybody kind of brings with them what they just worked on previously. If it's kind of not up to that same level of realism, it's going to fall short. It's going to be harder to kind of produce. Yeah. Production challenges.
But boy, when it works out, like even just that opening scene with Mr. Freeze, like when Batman's coming up and he comes down, right? And you're just like the crack into the broken, dome headpiece. Like there are scenes that I noticed, particularly with, the Bat family, because, that's who I enjoy watching. Right. And those fight scenes, like I'm talking about, when you guys get that realism, right? There's something like deeply satisfying about watching Batman doing that close up, like ninjutsu, elbow, knees, fight style versus Robin, the acrobatic gymnastic style. The way you guys managed to pull that off, it works great. And I didn't really register how intense or how hard that probably was for you guys to get to that space, or Black Canary's fight scenes, in an episode or two, with the kids.
We were complete martyrs to realism.
And credit to the directors and board artists for really picking up the challenge there. Cause I know we had conversations like, I was watching the final fight before the building falls in, and I saw some scenes where Kid Flash was getting hit, but they were just glancing blows because he could not take a direct hit and survive, or, maybe not break something. And I know there were discussions about that, how to make that believable that he could survive that. And then the building falls in on him, and you got to show they're injured. So doing torn costume models and showing Kid Flash and Robin high five, but they wince because damn, that hurt. Just high fiving after a building fell on you, that kind of stuff. Trying to get all those little isms in there. Board artists and directors kind of, if you can give them that challenge up front, they really love to get their heads into it and run with it. So our team was really good for coming up, helping find that, because not every one of those. Some of those moments are in the script if we can build them in, but there's a lot that are found while the show's being executed to help carry those little, realistic nuances forward that collectively, hopefully make you feel, as you did, Rich, that it felt right. And maybe you don't know why, but it's just a cumulative effect of a lot of little tiny choices that you don't necessarily perceive as they're going by at 24 frames a second, but you feel it. Your brain picks up on it, and at the end of it, it felt real.
And honestly, I think that's where the cornerstone inspiration of doing this podcast came from, which was, you love this show, I love the show, and I kept asking, what are they doing that's making my brain and my heart react in these ways? And diving into it as I was watching it several times. And then when we decided to do the podcast, it's like, look, you love the show. Let's try and teach you why you love the show, so you can learn from them. So you can take, Ghost in the Machine, psychic, imagery or whatever, and put it into your new creative thing. Right. And take Young Justice and Yes And on that to create new and incredible stuff that we can all enjoy. So you can understand where this process comes from, at least as far as we can, undermine. Because early on, I don't think I've ever said this, but I mean, I remember when Caleb and I started the show, I was like, gosh, I wonder if anybody from the show will ever listen. And then Brandon, you like messaged me through Twitter, I think, in the first, the third episode dropped or something. And I was like, oh no, you guys are actually listening. Well, we already got 12 more episodes in the can. I hope I didn't say anything terrible. So, that you nailed it on a bunch of stuff. I know when you go back and rewatch these episodes, I'm sure you're finding stuff you're like, oh, I wish we'd done that a little differently, or, that was hard. And, maybe that whatnot. But the cornerstone of what you were trying to get across clearly affected, us and a lot of people. So thanks for all that hard work. Thanks for correcting all the I's and getting them aligned. Because boy, that would have driven me insane.
Clearly, the word for the day is
cornerstone. It is cornerstone.
So I'll act like I know what I'm doing and have a beautiful segue. Speaking of eyes, I found something on my. Hey, listen! Don't throw your hands up yet. You can throw when I'm done.
All right, I'll throw hands up.
But so the other 3 seasons have subtitles, if you will: Invasion, Outsiders, Phantoms. The internet tried to convince me today that season 1 also had one of those. And I'd like to Brandon,
those faces do not.
You're
say
already
yes.
making the face that I was making when I found it. And yes, this is what I'm. Thank you. It listed it as identity, as if it were. No, I know this. I have never once ever remotely seen anything to indicate that this.
And what identity?
Idea. I just wanted to share.
I was like, if we're going to start hallucinating a subtitle, I would assume it was Secrets and Lies. Like,
this is, yeah. So just hanging out on the internet,
I'm not sure that's good for you, Neil.
Yeah. Well, listen, at the end of most shows, when you're supposed to tell people to follow you on social media, I've started telling them to delete it. Go on your phone, find your social media of choice and delete it. And go outside. It's not the right way to do this, but that's what I tell everyone. Yeah. So just so you know, just floating out there in the internet is the idea that Young Justice identity for season 1.
No, I've already removed that, whatever that was.
Yeah, me too. I just wanted to verbalize it.
Great. That's the note we're ending on.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Confirmation that that's not really a thing.
Neil, the internet had incorrect information about Young Justice?
Yeah.
Really?
It's still there. Just wanted to let everyone know. It's still hanging out there.
The takeaway is xenomorphs are aliens. And there we go. Officially said on the podcast.
I will never, ever forget the chaos that erupted on the internet when Wikipedia suddenly said there was an episode where Robin was leaving the team, and everyone simply believed it for like 2 weeks. We weren't We weren't doing well, guys.
All right. Well, is there anything else that we want to touch on?
No, I mean, there are little moments that were sort of fun. I think, Kid Flash is really funny in this episode. All the sort of like he does, you called an it, and Oh, look, the moon. Oh, and Superman. We kept our promises.
That actually leads me to a question I had. I actually didn't think about it. An observation was the thing that became the West maneuver.
Oh, the West maneuver, yeah.
I mean, that sounds like one of those things you said last time where it's like you did a thing and then writers kept, it's like, oh, if you can make a reference to this. And we were just watching, see the season 4 finale where they West maneuver Zod, or not Zod. It was one of the other Kryptonians into the hole back into the Phantom Zone. It carries through seasons. Was that wasn't a thought process or a plan?
No, I mean, I think that it was just like, that's a kindergarten move.
That's a Wally West move for sure.
Yeah, it just feels, and then it just became like, but actually, if you're a superhero, it's kind of a useful move.
Yeah, it's pretty helpful.
So they name it after Wally because it was his stick. I do sort of love how, and this was intentional. I remember this discussion is we really play Kid Flash as a human bowling ball in this episode. He just high speed, smashing through things, knocking elves over, etc. Then the big doors close and he ends up just not being able to slow down fast enough and slamming into it. We were trying to find ways to illustrate not just their powers, but their limitations as well. And
their psychology. Really, too.
Yeah.
Separation from the mentor as well. Different style of running fast. And then also we, got the armor on there. Phil designed the character with some additional padding so that those maneuvers would work a little better and make sense. That was, Wally had a request about how to make that next suit. He had reasons in mind, and we get to see him, execute and use all of that.
Yeah. Were there other little things you were noticing, Greg, in this episode or these 2 episodes?
There's a thing at the very beginning, which is what I was trying to find earlier, which was Dr. Desmond sort of recapping the first episode for the light,
right,
which is a way for us to recap for the audience,
right,
without actually doing it previously on Young Justice, which I came to hate after doing that on Gargoyles for 52 episodes. To find an organic way to get what the audience needed to know from previous episode in. The orders that the light give is like clone them and dispose of the source material. And that was actually, again, us giving a little fair play hint to what was coming with Roy and Will down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff in it that I noticed throughout, but I think we probably covered the vast majority of it.
All right. Well, that sounds good. And with all that out of the way, I think we can Zeta out of the garage. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Oh, we're not doing all that.
I don't know why we
There's
keep
audio
leaving
clip
it
for
in.
that. Don't do that.
We're just, Neil, you put
delete
words
it
in front
in
of
theory.
us. We just start saying
Oh
them.
my gosh. Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
it's still
my
there.
gosh.
Are you going to erase it? You're erasing it right now.
It got erased. There. Fine.
Boom. Hey, man, I'm just trying to do what the producer tells me to do.
I fixed it.
On
I
high.
deleted it. Now you don't
Great.
have to be bothered by it.
Fantastic.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our hosts are Rich Howard and Emily Booza. Our editor and producer is Neil Powell. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.